Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being with us today. As James said, this is the next webinar in a series we're running bi-monthly, which covers a number of different topics in the apprenticeship world. And today we're going to be discussing putting the learner at the centre of apprenticeships. If you've not been on any of our previous webinars, then we hope this next hour is insightful and helpful. If you have been on one of our previous webinars, then we're delighted to have you back. My name is Paul Crisp. I will guide you through the next hour. Format of the session, just to run through it, will be firstly some comments from our Service Delivery Director, Samantha Tobin. She's going to talk about how we here at Just IT and Skills team put our learners at the centre of apprenticeships. We're then going to hear from Paul Thompson from our partner Cognisys. He'll give an overview of what neurodiversity is and how Cognisys supports learners with neurodiverse needs. Then we're going to move on to a panel discussion. So Sam and Paul will join Rachael and Eleanor from Travers Smith and Sainsbury's respectively. As James said, there is an option for Q&A after, so please feel free to put any questions into the chat box as the webinar progresses, and we'll look to answer as many questions as we can at the end. Firstly, just going to do a quick overview of who we are at Just IT and Skills team. So we are an organisation that cover three areas, so training, so short courses for individuals. We cover senior IT recruitment, and of course, the reason why you're all on this call, apprenticeships in both the IT and digital space, as well as leadership and management. We are delighted to be celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. Our official birthday happened last Monday on the 15th of March. And what we did a bit of number crunching around our business. So I'm going to ask James to go on to the next slide. We realised that if we added up the years of service of apprenticeships of our staff, we have over 450 years of experience, and over 200 years of those are within Just IT. We're very proud of the work we do with our clients. A couple of those you'll be hearing from later, and around 70% of our business is actually with repeat clients. We're also very proud to say that we've helped over 10,000 people either start or progress their tech careers in the last 20 years, and we currently have around about 70% of our learners in place with our top 20% partners. And you can also see some of our accreditations and our partners that we work with on the right. There's a little bit about us. I'm sure some of you will know us very well. And before I go to Sam, we're going to do a quick poll. So I'm going to hand over to James to set that up. Over to you, James.
Thank you, Paul. I like seeing those figures. It's great to see the amount of knowledge we've got within the business. So the first poll, ladies and gentlemen, a bit of interactive. So we'll need you to answer this. So what would be the most important demand IT skill for your organization this year in 2021? So let me select that poll, and I'm going to launch that onto your screens. And there's about 5 options. So you should be seeing that now, which is IT support, network engineer, security, data analyst, or cloud specialist. If you can click the option that suits your business or is more appropriate in terms of the IT skill that's going to be demand this year. And then what I'll do is I'll close the poll and then share the instant results with you. So I'll give that, there's lots of votes coming in. I'll give that another 5 seconds. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'm going to close the poll now. And I'm going to share the results with you, Paul. And there is the results for you, sir.
Thank you very much. So yeah, so nothing for network engineering cloud specialist, but 17% security. And I think from our side, fantastic news. IT support 33%, and data, we are seeing a massive rise in the need for data. So 50% of you saying data analyst would be the most in-demand skill, which is food for thought for our panel discussion later on. Thank you very much, James. I'm going to pass over to Sam Tobin, our Service Delivery Director, who's going to give a bit of an overview of how we at Just IT and Skills team have put learners at the centre of apprenticeship. So Sam, over to you.
Thanks so much, Paul, and hi everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. So as Paul mentioned, I'm the Service Delivery Director, and that means that my team and I are responsible for ensuring that we're delivering really impactful learning experience for our learners on programme, ensuring that we're keeping them, of course, at the heart of everything that we do. So, you know, as Paul mentioned, we've got a number of years experience, something like 200, I believe. I've given 5 of my 10 years total experience in apprenticeships to Just IT, and in preparation for this webinar today, really gave me the opportunity to kind of reflect back in terms of the drivers that led me to join the business 5 years ago in March, so this month. And absolutely what attracted me was that it was so evident coming in very early on that this business was incredibly learner-centric. Fast forward 5 years on now, and I'm really proud to lead our service delivery team, their teams of coaches and trainers, some of the most learner-facing teams who truly do put our learners at the centre of all that we do and at the centre of their apprenticeships. So to start here, just in reference to this slide, I suppose, a few years back, we defined and shared an internal mantra. We call it our every person matters mantra. So this, whether this be our internal colleagues, our customers, or of course our learners, this translates within our apprenticeship division as every learner matters. So no matter which organisation, their position, the programme they're on, every learner matters, has the same value. This mantra is absolutely central to us, and it really truly does inform our decision-making processes, our behaviours, the practices within our business, and it really isn't uncommon for us inside of a meeting to ask each other, look, what's the best thing for the learner here? So what began as a mantra has embedded over time and has really become our culture. You can take me on, please, Paul. And part of that culture for us is absolutely around continual improvement. So that culture of continual improvement being driven very much through the feedback shared by our learners and our employers, who are invited to share their feedback after each interaction through their coach, through their trainer, through their account manager. So we review this feedback, it's on a weekly cycle, and over time our very brilliant MI team share back trend data with us. It's that trend data which helps us to shape the programmes and curriculum for the better. Beyond this, of course, we contact learners whose comments would indicate that their sessions didn't deliver the impact we intended, if their NPS score falls within that detractor scoring. So, you know, for us, it's not survey collation, it really isn't a tick box compliance activity. Our learner feedback really is central to change. It does drive the change in our business. And for those that have project managers, perhaps within their employ, you'll know that our programme delivery was recently reformatted, and that was absolutely driven by learner feedback. Take me on, please, Paul. So another team who truly live and breathe the every learner matters principle is our information, advice and guidance, or IAG team. So this is the team who not only hold expert level qualifications, they come with years of experience in delivering pastoral care. And I'm sure, of course, you can imagine that this team have been so central to the support of our learners through the last year. They split their time between contacting learners at regular intervals on programme, not only in checking in terms of how they're progressing, but how they're coping. And it's at that point we can identify any additional support or perhaps signpost them as appropriate. This team are also the other avenue through which learner feedback is shared back into the business, typically directly with my delivery managers, and in turn their coaches, so that we can then action. Take me on, please, Paul. So it's a very well-timed webinar when I was thinking about this morning, because it was almost a year ago to the day that myself and the leader and manager teams were, I think, like so many of us, trying to plan for and anticipate what lockdown would mean, and for us, what it would mean for our learners. So we were certain that we were going to see more breaks in learning than perhaps we'd ever seen before, particularly across the trusts and the public sector organisations that we partner with. And our strategy back in those days that we effectively delivered, I suppose, across the last year, was that we would not only honour breaks in learning, but that we were there to ensure that the welfare of our learners was still being reviewed, that they were still being contacted through our soft touch calls, IAG sessions, and then through the planned activity we designed to engage. We delivered a number of engagement webinars, mail outs, lunch and learn sessions. And our view there was, you know, can we provide a welcome distraction? Can we ensure that these learners are still engaged? With a view, of course, to bringing them back on programme at a time that was kind of reasonable for them. 1 year on, and we still have a number of learners on breaks, of course. And and that process, those principles are still upheld. Our ultimate goal is to welcome them back to learning. Take me on, please, Paul. And that's a continuation. Just to share, of course, that we are proud to partner with public sector organisations and the trusts. Okay. Finally then, before I hand over to Paul Thompson from Cognosist, who's going to provide a much greater overview than I will here, I'll just share that something that my team and I and the wider business are really excited about is Cognosist, the platform that we have implemented as of last month. I feel it's one of the most important and significant investments that we've made in recent years to ensure that our learners experience. Something that really stuck out for me and for a few of us here at Just IT Skills team was Cognosist strapline, no learner left behind, which just felt so aligned to our own values. And I've now had the experience of using the platform myself. My team are now using this to support their learners. Can already see that this is really going to enrich the learners' time on programme and beyond. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Paul Thompson, who's going to provide a great overview for you.
Thank you very much, Sam. Just audio check. Can you hear me okay?
All good, Paul?
Loud.
All good. Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Sam, thanks for the introduction. I hadn't had the benefit of seeing your slides prior to this, and I wrote down your strapline, every learner matters. So just to echo what you said, we'll come on to No Learner Left Behind in a moment, but it's great to see that there's that synergy there between the two organisations. Guys, just a quick introduction to me. I've been with Cognosist almost from the very beginning, so I'm one of the original members of staff. We've been around for about 5 years now. Over that time, we've grown as an organisation and support apprenticeship providers, adult skills providers, and FE providers all over the UK. We're very, very proud and privileged to be partnered with an organisation like Just IT, and we really look forward to seeing this relationship blossom. And the outputs of that effectively going to be that your apprentices are going to benefit massively. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today in terms of what on earth is Cognosist, why is it important, and what does it do? So if we could have the next slide, please. Brilliant, thanks for that. So yeah, just to recap on No Learner Left Behind, it's a very, very simple mission goal for us, but we put the learner at the centre of everything, which again ties in phenomenally well with the theme for today's presentation. We are on a mission to help everybody, every learner, reach their full potential, and it's about understanding that starting point that allows you as an employer, your training providers, and us to plan out and support that learner in the in the most effective way. So if we can have the next slide, please. New diversity. What on earth is new diversity? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that today, but I hope everyone's ready for a quick science lesson. Cognition, guys, is or new diversity rather, it's just a different way of thinking. Every human on the planet thinks in a different way. You are completely unique. Some interesting facts around cognition is between the ages of around 0 and 2 years old. So as a baby, as a toddler, your brain is super hardwired for learning. That's why we see so much development through those early years. The synapses in your brain, you've got about synapses are the part of the brain that are responsible for moving that information around. There's about 2 quadrillion of them. By the time you get to about 7 years old, okay, naturally your brain will have gone through a process called synaptic pruning, which will claw some of those synapses back, and it'll be stronger or it'll be less strong in certain areas depending on the type of stimulation you've had, you know, through visual, audio, tasking your brain to do certain things. So by the time you're about 7 years old, your brain is effectively hardwired. Your cognitive architecture is fixed. So you could well be you stuck with what you've got is kind of is the key message there, but that can be a great thing if you've got really good broad new diversity. However, if you have an area that is requiring support, it may be the fact you don't get to know that until you get to do an apprenticeship with Just IT. So you could have gone through 13, 14 years of education struggling. So if we can have the next slide, please. So neurodiversity, as I mentioned, is just about thinking and learning differently. It's a scientific term. It's a relatively new term. I mean, neurodiversity has always been around, but it's a word that's becoming more and more common now. People are switching on to this more and more. But everybody processes information differently. It'd be a very boring world if we were all exactly the same, right? But as you can see from the images on the screen, they are all human brains. They're all completely different. So neurodiversity is something to be embraced, is going to be the key message today as well. It's a good thing, but it's about understanding where the diversity is, and then if there's support needs, how we go about supporting that, and actually leveraging the strengths as well, because that's as important. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. Okay, I don't know, I'm sure everybody can remember this, I certainly can, but the dress, it was a bit of a viral sensation a year or two ago, might have been a bit longer ago actually. But it was all over social media, and it was really highlighting the difference in the way people interpret what is effectively, it's just visual information, right? So some people, unfortunately, I didn't build a poll in to see who thinks it's what. I see it as white and gold, just for clarity. But there was a lot of argument. People actually couldn't understand how somebody can see. I don't know how you could see that as blue and black. I just don't get it. But what that exposes from a cognition perspective is people can be quite ignorant to people's different ways of processing information. And this is a little bit of fun, and it's a bit of tongue in cheek. But actually, I think it's a great example of the way someone perceives something can be completely different to somebody else. And that's going to be an important concept when we move through the presentation today. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. So just to dovetail with what I've said, if somebody thinks it's blue and black and somebody thinks it's white and gold, they're two people who see things completely different. But typically education, and we wrap apprenticeships into this, guys, it's been a one-size-fits-all approach. You know, when I was at school, we would sit and we would just recite multiplication over and over again until it sunk in. It never sunk in for me. All right, my brain didn't operate; it just operated in a completely different way. So the most effective educators, all right, are the ones that are investing in and identifying that people are different. And you know, Sam gave the example of it. It's a significant investment. It's a significant investment in their people, and by their people, it's their learners, their apprentices, their teams. Everybody's totally different, and it's about understanding that and embracing that. Okay, so we've got a little number up in the top right hand corner there, and it's 1 in 3. And this may come as a surprise to some of you, or it may be something that you know already, but around 1 in 3 people would have, by definition, neurodiversity on a standard score. We're going to look at standard scoring in a minute, just so you can understand what that means. But the key point from us and from people within our field is that it's more common than you think, but people don't think about it very much because it's not something that people are thinking about on a daily basis. So through the work that we do, through the work of our partners like Just IT do, we're bringing this to the fore. We're helping organisations, employers understand, yes, we've got people in our business who are neurodiverse. We understand what that means and we know how to support them. Next slide, please. So how can educators and employers embrace cognitive neurodiversity? Interestingly, 1 in 5 people leave education with no basic skills. Phenomenal, I know. But we've probably all had experience of working with people who struggle with things like spelling, English, reading, writing, maths. It's not always down to the fact that they're just not good at maths or English, or IT skills, for example, is another one, particularly for the call today. 1 in 5 people have like below grade level C in old money. I know it's changed recently. Below C level qualifications in maths and English and ICT skills. So we need to do something about this, and it's not always, as I mentioned, the fact that they can't do it. It's that there might be a neurological reason why they can't process information in a certain way. Why investments like this, that Just IT have made it so important, is because from this statistic here, paper-based assessments, which are typically used in higher education, the numbers are that it ends up around 3% of people who've been to the university are given an opportunity to complete an assessment of this kind. So that means there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people going through education every year who do not get the ability to understand, how do I think and how do I learn around a really scientific, robust model. Just as an example, our chief executive, Chris Quickfall, who started the business, didn't find out he was dyslexic until he went to university. So 18, 19, 20 years in education before he found out why he was struggling with those lessons all of his life. So if we move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so once we understand how a person thinks and learns, then we can really start to tailor the journey for the individual. And I'm going to give you a bit of insight today, guys, around how Just IT can do that using the platform. But it's about really understanding through the use of technology, which of course Cognisys is a technology platform, about understanding how the learner thinks and learns, what strategies we need to put in place to support them, how do we ensure that the team delivering the support can support them really effectively, and what collateral and guidance is out there for employees to access as well. So if we can just move on to the next slide, please. So how can we, so again, keeping on the same theme, how do we empower you as an organisation to support your learners end to end? By knowing the starting point, as I've alluded to, and supporting the learners, Just IT are able to improve things such as their achievement rates, the timely success, learner well-being. As employers, these are things that should be, and I imagine, are really important to you. You know, learners coming through on apprenticeships, you want them to be completing in the right amount of time. And typically, there may be reasons why people have been hamstrung. It may be that they are just struggling with the qualification because of a neurological because of Geo Diversity. So having this insight is going to allow us to lift the lid on that and really, really delve in and help the learner move through that qualification. If you, as an employer of apprentices, embrace the mentality that no learner's left behind, that makes the world a much nicer place. And in schools and higher further education and workplaces, everybody should be able to appropriately respond to any needs that that learner might have. So let me give you a really quick example. I'm neurodiverse, guys. I was identified as having a score of around 78, 76, 78 on my verbal memory. I've known all of my life that I struggle with verbal memory, and I've built up my own mechanisms to support me with this. But one of the things that happens at Cognisys, because my colleagues know this, and we of course embrace this, if I'm ever out, back in the days when we used to go out and meet people before we did everything via Zoom, if I was in the car and took a phone call from one of my colleagues, they would follow that. This is a very small example. They would always follow that call up with an email summarising what we discussed, because genuinely I would get to another location or would take another call, and 99% of that call could have gone, sometimes all of it. So they recognise, and I recognise, that there's quite a significant need for me there in terms of recalling and processing that verbal information, and we can do something about it. And that's been really, really helpful for me. So my employer knows all about it, and they've got measures to help me out. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. So what is Cognisys and how does it work? Very succinctly, there's three pillars to Cognisys. One is digital cognitive assessments. That's a 30-minute assessment. It's an online cloud-based platform. The learner goes through, and you'll remember the brain at the beginning of the presentation, there was 8 different domains of the brain. So it's an assessment taking 30 minutes, chunked up into 8 different elements. It's very familiar, they're very common batteries of tests to look at specific parts of the brain. We've digitized them and we've made them quick and easy to do. Well, easy is probably not the right word, because if you struggle with some of those areas, then they'll be more challenging, but it's easy to access is probably a better way to say that. If everybody gets a report, so you will see on the next slide when we look at standard scoring that we've got a spiky profile, and I'll talk through that in more detail then. But if a learner is deemed as having a support need because they've scored 84 or below on any of the areas, then Cognisys is going to provide that learner, your learner, with very specific, so brain profile specific and qualification level specific content through a virtual learning environment that the learner can access through any internet-enabled device. And it's going to be giving them instructions and guidance around how to how to cope more effectively, and how to manage the way they process and take this information in better. And a lot of the proof in the pudding around the strategies is how, not doing it, but applying it. So the team at Just IT will be looking at this, and they'll be, as part of their overall support strategy for the learner, they'll be investigating how effective it's been. They'll be measuring it with we touched on information, advice, and guidance. That's a massive part of this. So learner identifies with the need, learner gets support, and then we've trained, or we're training Just IT, all of their teams to understand what does all of this mean? How do I understand the report? How do I communicate this to a learner? How do I communicate this to an employer as well? What does support look like for individual needs? What if a learner's got multiple needs? And we train the guys up so that they are able to have the conversations and add significant value to the learners. So if we can just skip the slide, please. Thank you. So we talked about standardized assessments. I'm sure you're all familiar with the bell curve. Right up the middle is deemed as kind of like halfway between the population, half to the left, half to the right. When we look at the spiky profile below, this is just an example. The assessment report's got a lot more information than this in it, but in terms of just explaining standardized assessments, if we look at executive function there, which is the middle domain, executive function is the part of the brain that is associated with organizing, planning, prioritizing, multitasking, time management as well, actually, and a multitude of other things, but it's that high level processing. It's the top part of the brain as well, so that high level processing ability, if the learner's identified, as they have here, as below 84, the support that learner is going to get is going to focus on this. So for example, and this is just one miniature example of hundreds, but if the learner is, if I'm that learner's tutor, I'm not going to give them a project to go off and work on, because they're going to procrastinate, it's not going to get done, it's going to get left to the last minute, and it's going to be a mess. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the project, I'm going to chunk it up, I'm going to give them very specific milestones to work towards, and then we're going to review and analyse that before we move on to the next task. That is just one example of how you could support somebody in the executive function. Standardised scoring, again, it's done across populations, so this is something that's used for like IQ tests and all kinds of things like that. There's no correlation between cognition and intelligence, guys. You could have an IQ of 145 and still be neurodiverse and vice versa. Okay, so I think that's one thing as well, just in terms of sometimes there's a bit of stigma associated to this, and there shouldn't be. Neurodiversity can be a superpower, because as we've looked here, whilst this learner is identified as needing some help with their executive function, look how strong they are in other areas. So we can leverage that as well. If we know that about a learner, we can use those strengths to our advantage. Can we move on, please? Reasonable adjustments at endpoint assessment. I just want to quickly touch on this. Cognosist within the assessment paper, within the assessment report, has a page if the learner's matched as requiring support, has a dedicated section for endpoint assessment organisations. So Just IT could be supporting the learner for a couple of years, doing amazing work, helping them get to where they need to get to, putting the support mechanisms in place, and then they go for the endpoint assessment. And no allowances are made. Well, that's not fair. So Cognosist, we work with the Department for Education and some major awarding bodies to help define the adjustments. So this report within the assessment report specifically outlines adjustments that need to be made for the learner at that endpoint assessment, and Just IT would give that to the EPO well ahead of time. So just some real good added value for your learners or your employees once they go through to that endpoint assessment. Next slide, please. So I'm going to wrap up by just making an offer to everybody, actually. We've recently produced a new diversity masterclass that's endorsed by NCFE, one of the major awarding bodies. Everybody, all of Just IT's partners, Just IT's customers, clients, can access the masterclass. It's 6 hours of content. You don't have to do it all at once. You can break it up in 2 hour sections. All you need to do is go to our website and access it and register. If we've got anybody from HR teams on board today, if we've got any learning development specialists on, guys, use this as part of your CPD for your staff. Raise the awareness of this, because this is something that transcends apprenticeships. This is for everybody really, but we really recommend that you take some or get some insights from this, because the course is really good. The feedback's been amazing, and it's there for you. So if anybody's got any questions on that, I'm sure you can get the questions to me. Failing that, hit Cognisys website and just register. And last thing is, we've got an insights hub on our website as well. So we are super proactive in terms of pushing information out there. And it's not necessarily sales collateral we're pushing out best practice, we're pushing out knowledge base, that type of thing. So again, on the website, there's a separate section just for insights. If anybody wants to go and find out a little bit more about how this works and how as employers you can play a part in supporting the learners, then it's all there for you. And I think we're very close to last slide, are we? We are indeed. So here's to the future of human potential, and it's your potential, it's everyone's potential. Let's make new diversity something that we embrace. Let's make, it's a big part of diversity in its own right, and let's help shape the future for people. That's my bit over. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Paul. Really appreciate that. I'm going to ask you to stay on screen if that's okay, mate, because we're going to go on to our panel discussion now. So yourself and Sam are going to be joined by a couple of our clients. I'm going to pass to Richard Landon, our Client Services Director, who's going to take the panel for about the next 20 minutes. So over to you, Rich.
Thank you very much indeed. If I could invite Rachael and Eleanor to come up on camera as well, please, that would be great. Rachael, if I can come to you first, you want to do a very quick intro, say hello, and explain who you are, who you work for, etc., please.
Hi, I'm Rachael. I work at Travers Smith, which is a London law firm. I run the catering operation at Travers Smith, both for clients and internally. So I head up quite a big team, and we have worked with Just IT quite a lot across the whole business, but particularly in the teams that I run.
Thank you very much indeed. And Eleanor, would you kindly introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name's Eleanor. I work for Sainsbury's. I think we all know who Sainsbury's are. And I look after apprenticeship programs and partner with Just IT. And we've been working together since 2016 now. So mostly in the digital and tech space, but we have about 30 live programs across the estate.
Wonderful. And obviously, Paul, you've obviously met, and Sam, who is also on the panel, but not on camera today, you've met as well. For those of you who've not met me, my name is Richard Lambden. I'm the Client Services Director for Just IT and Skills team, with the company for 8 of those 450 years and a dozen in apprenticeships myself. Just before we kind of, by the way, Paul, that was fascinating. So thank you very much for sharing. And I'm sure the slides will go out with the recording. So anybody wants those free 6 module, 6-hour classes, then either come through to myself or Paul, and we'd be delighted to share the link. The poll results, just a little bit of commentary interest. Eleanor, I think 50% was data analysts, 33 IT support, 17% security, less interest in network engineering and cloud specialists. Is that what you're seeing across Sainsbury's and Argos?
Yeah, I think data, particularly in the obviously the pandemic and the need for data and the new trends and different ways that our customers are using our stores and using our services has really changed. So being able to access that data and what it tells us has been very, very important. So absolutely a need for us going forward.
Yeah, you're not surprised by that one. Fantastic. Okay, we kind of get into the questions, and if I may, and I come to you first, Rachael. If you kind of think about Travers Smith as an organisation, what have been the biggest changes that the company have had to make, and what kind of impact has that had on, I don't know, working practices, use of technology? You know, when we spoke before, you've given some lovely examples of how you'd engage with staff and their children with cooking classes and things. So talk a little bit about, you know, how things have been affected at Travers Smith.
So like many people, our firm transitioned to being solely online, and for the kitchen teams, that was a big challenge, and I was really determined that we could continue to deliver the service that we did we do normally, but just obviously not by providing food. So we started to give lots of online classes and do lots of online events and really tailor them for people. So in half term, when lots of people were really struggling having their kids at home and working from home, we did cooking classes for kids, all using obviously using tech, using lots of different platforms to make that happen, and then did a variety of courses. And we've seen what an impact that's had across the business, just in terms of people's morale and feeling connected and engaged.
Wonderful. And I think you're going to repeat it with some cookies and biscuits and things at Christmas, not Christmas, at Easter, sorry.
Easter, yeah, we are indeed.
Fantastic. Eleanor, what about Sainsbury's? Obviously huge estate. Stores, obviously we're all grateful for key workers, and I think people in stores often get forgotten about the great stuff that NHS does. But what about all of your kind of, you know, the support staff, how have they been impacted? What's happened?
Yeah, so within store support or kind of head offices we have all gone to home working, and the majority of our individuals have probably been home working now for a full year. So obviously accessing training has completely changed, and everything has moved to virtual. And also for all of our colleagues in store and logistics who are on apprenticeships, now the way that they're accessing their training as well is virtual as well. So that face-to-face element has been a massive change for us, but obviously virtual has enabled us to continue with all of their learning.
Has that provided any kind of challenges around technology? Because we just assume that everybody at home can suddenly access all of these wonderful new platforms that we've been introduced to, but of course that isn't the case. How has Sainsbury's tech coped with that?
I think what the pandemic has done is it's kind of probably forced people to change as well, and there has been no other way. So I think actually what we've seen is sometimes there can be that resistance to change. Sometimes there can be, that resistance to going to virtual away from face-to-face learning, but actually that was the only safe way to continue with the program. So actually I think that we probably have hardly seen any pushback with that. Yes, tech and people accessing it as well is very different a year on, so people are feeling a lot more comfortable with doing that, and I think, you know, with many of you joining the call, we're all used to being on Teams or whatever platform that we use all day long, and so I think it's just a way in that we engage with one another now. So I think it's really been embraced, and also the way that our customers are using tech in our stores has changed dramatically as well. So I think it's all been really positive actually, because it's been seen as a need to be able to carry on.
Okay, thank you. Sam, in terms of thinking it from a delivery viewpoint and being very kind of apprenticeship specific, I would imagine for some of the tech pathways, actually being able to evidence some of the tasks that they're required to demonstrate to pass the qualification has kind of been hard. You think of the obvious, you know, taking a computer apart, putting that together, or loading software onto laptops, whatever it might be. How have we kind of overcome that to make sure that the apprenticeships are not impacted, their completion? You're on mute, I think, Sam.
Someone had to do it, and it had to be me, didn't it? Apologies, guys. So, but first and foremost, you know, we've been really supported and very much led through our EPAOs, and on our technical programs, that is the British Computer Society, the BCS. So they've offered enhanced flexibility, where, as you say, Richard, the hardware components within the standards are difficult to evidence, but we've also seen employers engage with us and be led by us, of course, through EPAOs in terms of how they can involve apprentices in projects, shadowing, etc., through remote settings. That means that they can meet the standard. So it's been a real steep learning curve, I think, and just the great collaboration for us through those EPAOs and with our employers.
And it's, you know, just to reassure everybody, the whole process can now be delivered remotely, can't it? So, you know, all the exams, functional skills, the endpoint assessment, all the training hasn't been impacted throughout lockdown.
Absolutely, yeah, across all programmes, and you know, pleasingly now that's a real seamless process. Of course, lots of exam bodies were taking a product to market very quickly this time last year, and we've now had a good year's experience under our belts and under their belts, of course, which means that we've got a nice slick process for our learners.
Thank you. Eleanor, you know, we're talking about putting the learner at the centre of apprenticeships, and one of the things that kind of occurred to me, that there are always upsides, aren't there, of every situation, and I would imagine the fact that people don't have to travel might have absolutely opened up the opportunities to think about social mobility to a wider group of people who might have been turned off because they had to travel into a training centre or might have been a part-time worker. Have you seen a wider pool of people across the business that have suddenly become interested in the last year because of this?
Yeah, definitely. I would say people who have external commitments around maybe children or caring, it suits their needs far better with not having to travel either side to event. Also, another thing that we've seen is previously, if say, for example, we would have had a cohort based in Manchester because the majority of our colleagues were there, we might have other individuals who worked and lived in Liverpool who would travel over to Manchester. And so that has made it much more accessible to people. So what we normally have always tended to see is the traditional full-timers have always been able to access the learning because it's been easy for them to navigate, but that's been a huge change. And also our night shift population, we've been working with our training providers to be able to deliver sessions in the evening and around in their working time as well, and they can access it remotely, which is fantastic. So I can have a manager engage their learning at 2 a.m. in the morning because they're working, and that's their kind of work shift pattern. So it's absolutely enabled us to be more inclusive and actually made us sit back and think we don't want to stop doing that when we hopefully live in a COVID-free world in the future.
Thank you. What about Travis Smith, Rachel? Have you seen any benefits of the different way of training being delivered for either for your team or across the business?
Definitely, I think it's given people a lot more flexibility. And as Eleanor was saying, if you with childcare commitments and all, lots of, care commitments, people have a lot going on in their lives. And this also enables people to feel quite in control of their learning. That's something I've noticed in the learners that I've had contact with, that it being online makes them, they're really engaged with it and they feel quite in control of it. Whereas, if they got sick one day and they couldn't travel and, it all often felt a little bit more complicated. This feels very streamlined. So similarly, it'll be something that we'll continue with.
Good. I mean, thank you for that. I was kind of going to say, what things do you think will remain moving forward? I mean, hopefully, is it the 21st of June? We're supposed to be coming out of lockdown, fingers crossed. I mean, what do you think will remain? Do you think your staff will go back to working full time in the office? I mean, I'm sure your team will, but what about the rest of the staff?
I think there's a lot of negotiations going on, a lot of talk about that at the moment, and it will end up being some kind of some days in the office, some days working from home arrangement. But I think one of the things that's become really clear in the pandemic, and that we really notice in the being in the restaurant side or the food side, is that people really miss being together. And I think that is there's many things that are great about working remotely and working virtually and learning virtually, and there's also something really positive and important about being in physical closeness and the type of meetings that you can have in person that are different to what you can have online.
What about at Sainsbury's? Do you think there'll be any changes, Eleanor, or do you think people will work in a different way in the future?
No, I really echo everything Rachel said. I think actually, particularly in our tech division, there's a real sense of when people come together, it will be from a well-being point of view and to collaborate. So I think that we will definitely see a different way of you know, the kind of traditional being in the office Monday to Friday, I think that will be a thing of the past. And when people are together, it will be, what is the value, what is the intention of bringing these people together, and I think it will be to collaborate. But I think we'll have a very blended model of working, and I think it won't be the same any week. So I absolutely agree with what Rachel said. The main thing that people want to do or come together is from a wellbeing point of view, and feel that connection to others. I think the biggest thing probably from our point of view is actually when a team is very connected and has maybe worked together for years, that's quite easy, because when you talk together online, you know each other. I think we're the most mindful of is when someone is new to the organisation. So we have people who've joined our business this year who still have not physically met their teammates, and we're very aware of that.
But it's not kind of impacted in terms of your aspiration to use apprenticeship programs to develop your staff, or you know, bring new people in where possible.
Absolutely not. And actually, probably in Store Support Centre, we've seen a huge take up of apprenticeship programs since being in the pandemic, because people want to develop as well. So no, absolutely, it's not a hindrance to the offer. If anything, it's probably really made people look at that route more.
Paul, you in your presentation, I think you used the word that there perhaps in the past have been a little bit of a stigma to, I'm going to use the old-fashioned word, perhaps people with learning needs or learning difficulties. And obviously what you're looking to do through neurodiversity is, I guess, change people's viewpoints. Kind of talk a little bit more about that kind of old world, new world time of context to what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, I mean, stigma is definitely the right word. I think one of the common misconceptions is that, and I'll use air quotes as cliched as they are, but stupid or thick or daft because you don't understand something. And there's typically people will try and hide things or mask them or make out like it's okay and that they understand, even if they don't. And that's really dangerous for the learner or the person. It's dangerous for the employer. It's dangerous for the trainer, but it's dangerous for everybody, because actually that person is not going to be effective because they don't understand, but they're afraid to say why. Now, what we want to do is normalise this. We, you know, us and the likes of Just IT, our partner, we want to normalise this and have people understand, okay, just because I don't understand something or can't process something a certain way, that doesn't matter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take ownership of what I can do and how I do it, and I'm going to leverage that to make myself more effective. So we're still a little bit one foot in the old world, we're definitely 1 foot in the new world, but definitely still 1 foot in the old world, because we've been around, I mentioned earlier on, around like 5 years, really active for like the last 4.5 years. And it's only now that, you know, things like this, for example, Richard, where we get the opportunity to speak to wider audiences and talk to people about the topic. So yeah, it's taken a long time to get it off the ground, but where will we be in another 4 years? And but as a subject matter. So yeah, it's just that's on everyone.
I mean, I think Sam, our approach is going to be that, you know, we've literally just gone live, as you said, in the last month, but our approach is going to be every applicant will undertake the process so it's equitable, and then if the results show that they need some support, then we'll obviously provide that support. And to me, that seems the right approach. Is that your philosophy?
Absolutely, yeah, and so we have a tranched approach, I suppose, in terms of the way that we're implementing, because we're learning as we're doing, of course. So we have our first group, so to speak, are the learners that are statemented, that have a declared additional learning need, as it was. And interestingly, they are learning more and more about the way in which that their brains are wonderfully unique, as you say, Paul, outside of their statemented requirements. So yeah.
Thank you.
The thing with that, just is we're not sticking labels on people, right? So typically old world learning needs identifications negative. They weren't very positive. They didn't give solutions. They just give you an answer. And you know, we set to do something slightly different.
Thank you, Rachel. If I can think about the kind of the welfare of your apprentices, and you know, if you want to bring it down to your specifically to your team, I think we're doing the team leader, operations manager type, the leadership management programs. Did you have to do anything different to kind of support their well-being? Because I'm guessing you were not seeing them physically, as you said, you were doing things remotely. How did you make sure that you kept them on the journey, kept them engaged, both in terms of their apprenticeship, but also in terms of their Travers Smith day-to-day job?
In terms of our team, we were in really regular contact with each other. In terms of Travers Smith as an organisation, we've had fantastic leadership throughout, particularly in the lockdowns, where someone from leadership and then across the whole business, someone would send a daily email. So we really felt like you were connected in to the whole firm and got to know colleagues that you didn't otherwise know. In terms of supporting learners, I spent more time with them than I might have done if we were in the office. I just knew the kind of transition to being them doing the apprenticeship in the kitchen and learning how to do, you know, being supervisors in the kitchen, and then having to help them understand how they're still doing their role, but they were doing it online with the team. I spent more time with them than I might have otherwise, and that was really helpful, and I really got a lot out of that for myself as well.
You were telling me when we were kind of meeting prior to the webinar that the idea of this kind of daily newsletter evolved, and actually staff started contributing. Is that right? And they kind of started to share their
so I wrote a daily email. So it was an email from someone across the business, and completely ranging from our managing partner to PAs to people, receptionists, everybody, you know, it was, and covering off not just the positive stories, but also what people were finding challenging, what they were struggling with, and it really gave you an insight into how diverse people's experiences were. You know, lockdown has meant many things to many of us, and it was a very humbling thing to read each morning.
Yeah, I can imagine, and probably brought you closer together as a result, I would imagine. Eleanor, you've got, I think, 1,300 apprentices across the estate. You're part of a team. How did your apprenticeship team go about addressing the well-being of learners on programs? I would imagine there were some you had to kind of pause for operational reasons. How did you tackle those sorts of challenges as a team?
Yeah, I think in retail, we had to, with kind of agreement of the government, we paused apprenticeships, anyone on an apprenticeship programme for the first 3 months of the pandemic, because I'm sure you all saw our stores, and that there wasn't always a huge amount on the shelves, because it was quite hard to keep it on there, particularly toilet roll. So yeah, we paused that, and as well, part of that as well was because actually we wanted to allow our colleagues and our managers to get on with the day job and to just focus on that. But then a huge amount of time went in to make sure that when we took all of our colleagues back onto programme in July, that they were supported. I think a big part of what we've done over this time is really actually focus on the line manager and line managers' understanding of programmes, because they are key in the colleague doing well, feeling supported. So our colleagues have always understood, I think, the expectations and what their part in the programme is and what they need to do to achieve. But actually line managers understanding, Rachel, as you said, some of those challenges of evidencing the 20%, what they need to do, and actually things going on around them has been really key for us. So making sure that we had videos for line managers to understand the programme, and that has been absolutely key for us, and our colleagues continuing to succeed across this time.
Thank you. I'm just going to wrap up, if I may, with kind of the same question to all of you. If there was kind of, I don't know, one takeout or one big bit of advice you would provide the audience in terms of the central theme, putting the learner at the centre of an apprenticeship, what kind of would that be? I'll throw it on you first, Paul. What advice would you give from a neurodiversity viewpoint to making sure that learners are supported in the centre of their apprenticeship?
Yeah, I think access to content, guys, learn about the subject. It is really interesting. You'll definitely learn something and become a more capable and well-rounded employer by undertaking some reading, watching some content, and just embrace it. it will make you far more effective as an organisation if you understand the insights we give you, or just IT give you. So yeah, and be patient. Yeah, everyone's getting back to learning.
Okay, and that 6-hour session either come to you or me if employers would like to take advantage of that.
Jump straight onto the Cognisys website, Richard. It's there for the guys ready. Yeah.
Fantastic. Eleanor, what would you say? What advice would you give in terms of making sure your learners are looked after or at the centre of the apprenticeship?
I would say line managers are key. If line managers understand the apprenticeships and are bought into it, your colleagues will have a great time, and also celebrate every single success. So because that G's everyone up, I think, and it gets them to focus on that end goal. So that would be mine, line managers and celebrate every success.
Thank you very much. Rachael?
Completely picking up on what Eleanor said, as a line manager and a mentor of people doing apprenticeships, it makes such a difference, and really get to know your learners, get to know what they need, because key interventions or key help from a line manager can make all the difference, and it can really help someone move forward in their apprenticeship where they might be really stuck. So I would, as someone who also manages the line managers, I would say make sure they have the time, because sometimes they don't get the time, and then that's part of the problem. So let's make sure that at every level there's time devoted to this.
Thank you. Sam, not for the first time, last word for you.
Learner and line manager voices, and make sure they've got a channel through which they can be heard.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed to all of you. Really appreciate your time today. I'm going to, if you'd be kind enough to go on mute and come off camera, I'm going to hand back to James for our final poll.
Thank you very much, Richard. What a wonderful panel discussion there. It was fantastic. So the next panel poll we've got now is what is likely to be the most important IT solution for your business in 2021? And there's 3 options now. So I'm going to launch this and it's going to come onto your screen. So pick one of the 3, which is cloud security or power apps. If you can select which one is more appropriate for the IT solution that's going to be important to your business in 2021, that would be absolutely fantastic. Oh, the votes are coming in thick and fast. So I'll give you another 5 seconds. Let's do this. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And I'm going to close and share the results with you guys. And the results are coming up right now. So we've got, I think 67% is security. We've got 33% cloud and no for power apps at the moment. So they are fantastic. So we normally have the next part, which is our question and answers. We've had a few questions that have come in, but fantasticly enough, we've actually answered all of those questions. So the questions coming in have been answered via our panelist discussions. So we'll lead you out for the rest of the webinar now. So I'll hand you back to Paul, who's just going to close us off with the final slides. Back to you in the studio, Paul.
Thank you very much, James, and thank you very much to our panel. Some really interesting comments there, and the conversation doesn't need to stop here. So if you'd like to speak with us more around this topic or around apprenticeships in general, there you go. You can reach us on the number and the email on the screen, or you can reach out to your account manager. Our next webinar is going to be on the 20th of May. And given that 50% of you said that data will be the most sought after IT skill this year, then I'm sure you're going to be signing up for this one. It's data heaven or data hell, data analytics in 2021 and beyond. Finally, there's going to be a short survey once this webinar closes. So I'd appreciate you taking a couple of minutes to give your feedback. If you found this interesting, please do spread the word. And if there's a topic you'd like us to debate in the future, then please do let us know. On behalf of all of us at Just IT, thank you for watching and have a fantastic day. Take care.